My name is Kathleen Smith, and I am a senior associate with the consulting firm Hazen & Sawyer. I am here today to present the findings of a regional water study as related specifically to Knox County. The regional study evaluated the adequacy of the water resources and associated infrastructure across Central Ohio throughout a 25-year planning horizon. The project was conducted by the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, in partnership with the Ohio Water Development Authority. The detailed modeling and analysis were conducted by the hired consulting firm Hazen & Sawyer. While the overall project considered water resources and infrastructure throughout a 15-county study area, this presentation will focus exclusively on the analysis and findings related to Knox County and its projected growth. The agenda for this presentation includes an introduction to the study and its objectives, a discussion of both the current and future conditions that were evaluated as part of this project, a presentation of the needs analysis of current and future water supply, demand, and treatment capabilities. The resource gaps and potential project options section identifies areas where existing developed water supply and infrastructure capabilities are insufficient relative to future needs. Insufficiencies are referred to as gaps. For each gap, potential project options will be presented. Opportunity areas have also been identified. These are areas where existing water supply or infrastructure capabilities will exceed future demands. In other words, areas where there is a surplus of water. And finally, water quality. We will close with a discussion of the projected changes to water quality throughout the planning horizon. Projected water quality impacts were developed based on projected changes to residential development, industrial development, and temperature and precipitation conditions. So let's begin with a high-level introduction to the study. The Central Ohio Regional Water Study was completed for a 15-county area, as shown on the map. The overall goal was to quantify current and future water-related needs within the region and identify areas with water-related gaps and surpluses. The study evaluated water-related needs that span drinking water supply, drinking water treatment capacity, wastewater treatment capacity, receiving water capacity, and water quality for the years 2030, 2040, and 2050. Project objectives were identified for the Central Ohio Regional Water Study. The objectives include improve, maintain, and optimize resources while planning for growth. Results of the model were used to evaluate opportunities to secure safe and reliable water supply for public use, consider reuse water for non-potable needs, and identify areas of capacity limitations. Future solutions were required to maintain beneficial use of water required for recreation, wildlife, and economic growth. Collaboration and regionalization. The project created a dashboard planning tool that will serve as a focal point for collaboration between utilities and state agencies, helping to ensure best use of both water and financial resources. Maximize funding impacts through sustainable infrastructure improvements. Using the analytic capabilities in the dashboard, state agencies can now and will in the future be able to help identify funding to build the infrastructure needed to meet the long-term needs for the region and identify future needs. The project also provides information to the state agencies on how stormwater and surface waters will be impacted by growth and development. The project can be used to identify opportunities to help mitigate impacts of development on the environment. The focus of the presentation will now shift to a discussion of the current water resources conditions in Knox County. This section will also include an introduction to the modeling that was completed for the evaluation of the overall water resources throughout the project area. An integrated water resources model was developed to evaluate the available water supply, water demands, wastewater demands, and other uses of water throughout the region. The integrated model includes several components that are all connected to one another as outlined in this graphic. Surface water, along with reservoirs, and groundwater supply feed either directly to water demands or feed a water treatment plant. That water treatment plant, in turn, supplies water demands, including the local population, golf courses, industries, and a myriad of other users. These water demands then go to a wastewater treatment plant, where the water is treated and returned to the surface water or groundwater supplies. The water resources model developed for this project attempts to track all of the water uses in Central Ohio and determine if sufficient water supplies exist. The model evaluates if there is enough treatment capacity, if all demands can be met, and if wastewater treatment plants can treat the projected flows. The model was evaluated for the entire 15-county region. This presentation will focus on the current and future supply and demand for water resources in Knox County. Groundwater availability was estimated at the HUC 10 watershed level. To explain, HUC stands for Hydrologic Unit Code, and the 10 stands for the number of digits. The U.S. Geological Survey has delineated each of the watersheds in the country and assigned them a specific number based on their location, similar to a zip code. The system identifies drainage areas into regions, 2 digits, subregions, 4, basins, 6, subbasins, 8, watersheds with 10 digits, and subwatersheds with 12 digits. The map reflects the HUC 10 watershed level, and the watersheds in Knox County are labeled and shown on the map. There are 5 HUC 10 watersheds shown on the map. For each of the watersheds, the average daily sustainable groundwater available was estimated. These values are shown in MGD, or million gallons per day. It is important to note that the groundwater isn't uniformly available across the entire watershed. The color shading on the map indicates the recharge capability, with darker shading reflecting areas with high recharge, where groundwater would be more plentiful. One daily groundwater availability value was assumed per HUC 10 watershed, and all groundwater users within that HUC 10 were assumed to share that amount of groundwater. Groundwater supplies in Knox County range from 1.7 to 10 million gallons per day for a given HUC 10. Across these watersheds, an estimated total of 26.7 million gallons per day can be sustainably withdrawn from Knox County groundwater sources. There are a few disclaimers about the groundwater approach that should be noted. First is scale. This study estimates total groundwater availability in each HUC 10 watershed as a single value, which makes its predictive capability only suitable for very large-scale assessments. The results are not suitable for site-specific analysis or any groundwater investigations, besides those at a regional or sub-regional scale. Delineation. Aquifer boundaries do not always coincide with overlying surface water systems. In this study, groundwater boundaries are defined by surface watersheds, and consequently, some aquifers may be split by unsuitable borders. This may lead to unexpected or misleading results, especially near watershed boundaries. And finally, uncertainty. Groundwater maps and studies always involve a high degree of uncertainty due to the complex nature of aquifers and the lack of widespread, reliable data sets of aquifer characteristics and water level information. While this is not unique to this study, its scale and time frame make its groundwater availability estimates especially uncertain. Site-specific scientific groundwater investigation could mitigate these uncertainties. Egan and Associates assisted with the groundwater analysis and provided information regarding groundwater resources and conditions throughout the study area. For the North Branch Kokosing River Huck, most of the groundwater potential is from sand and gravel outwash north of Fredericktown. Sandstone wells with yields of 25 to 100 gallons per minute, or GPM, are possible in the eastern part of the Huck. For the headwaters of the Kokosing River Huck, most of the groundwater potential is from sand and gravel outwash along the Kokosing River in Knox and Morrow counties. Parts of the Huck outside of the mapped outwash aquifers have little potential for high-capacity groundwater supply development. For Schneck Creek, Kokosing River Huck, most of the groundwater potential is from sand and gravel outwash along the Kokosing River. Less extensive outwash aquifer is also present along Jelloway Creek in the eastern part of the Huck and along Dry Creek southwest of Mount Vernon. Sandstone wells with yields of 25 to 100 GPM are possible in the eastern part of the Huck. Parts of the Huck outside of the mapped outwash aquifers in the western part of the Huck have little potential for high-capacity groundwater supply development. For the headwaters North Fork Licking River Huck, most of the groundwater potential is from sand and gravel outwash along the North Fork Licking River in Licking and Knox counties. Parts of the Huck outside of the mapped outwash aquifer have little potential for high-capacity groundwater supply development. And lastly, for the Jelloway Creek Kokosing River Huck, most of the groundwater potential is from sand and gravel outwash along Jelloway Creek upstream of Howard and along the Kokosing River east of Howard. Sandstone wells with yields of 25 to 100 gallons per minute are possible in most of the Huck outside of the outwash aquifers. This study assumes that groundwater availability per Huck 10 is unaffected by land use and changes in precipitation and temperature, meaning that high recharge areas are assumed to be protected and long-term cumulative precipitation is assumed to remain consistent. This is contrary to surface water availability estimates, which are sensitive to both land use and climatic conditions. Surface water availability is the cumulative sum of surface water from all watersheds in the county. However, surface water availability will vary for each stream location. Knox County is estimated to have approximately 87.8 million gallons per day of surface water availability. It should be noted that the surface water availability estimates are shown on this slide as raw runoff estimates based on a limited availability of stream gauge information, and they do not include modeled wastewater flows that are added to the streams. The surface water supply value is the minimum monthly average value for the current condition. Adding both the groundwater and surface water supplies together, it is estimated that Knox County has roughly 114.5 million gallons per day of total available raw water supply. This supply availability is roughly 25% groundwater and 75% surface water. Supply availability at the sub-county level varies by location based on aquifer yields and surface water tributary area, as presented on the previous slides. The next focus for this resource evaluation was the existing and future demands that draw raw source water from the available water resources. Data on water demand was developed using population data, which was available on a regional basis. The information on current county population was obtained from MORPC, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. These population data were used to further calculate water demand. The map on the slide is a heat map indicating the current estimated population distribution within the county. This estimate is for the year 2021, which is the year that the current conditions are based upon. Areas in blue tones are more densely populated, while the yellow tones indicate a less densely populated area. The darker in the center of the county indicate the population in the Mount Vernon and Howard areas. This map shows the assumed utility service areas for the county. Water demands were calculated for each utility using service area boundaries, the population within the service area, and recent historical water production data as reported to the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency. A per capita water use was calculated for each service area. This was calculated by taking the water production data and dividing by the assumed population within a service area, which resulted in a per capita water use of gallons per person per day. This per capita water use includes all types of users within the service area, whether it is residential, commercial, or industrial. It is important to note that in future conditions, no service area expansion was assumed, and the water per capita use for each utility was assumed to stay the same. That means that growth in projected population would also mean a proportional growth in commercial and industrial demand within the utility service area boundary. For future water demands, the per capita water use was multiplied by the assumed future population within a service area. The total calculated demands for the county are shown in this pie chart, categorized by type. In total, the water demands are 7.1 million gallons per day in the county for the 2021 current condition. The largest portion of the demand is shown in dark blue, which is labeled as municipal demand. This demand is approximately 3.4 million gallons per day and is based on the population and utility boundaries discussed earlier. It should be noted that each demand can be served by either a public or private utility. The next largest demand, shown in light blue, comes from the private water systems. Private system demand is calculated using the population not within an assumed service area. This population is assumed to be self-serving using groundwater wells. The per capita usage assumed for these private water users is 70 gallons per person per day. The total demand estimated from private water systems users is 2.3 million gallons per day. The additional categories shown on the chart represent existing users with water withdrawal permits who report their use annually to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. These include residential users such as rural housing developments or mobile home parks, commercial users including retail stores, industrial demands from manufacturing facilities, agricultural draws from large farms, and seasonal users such as golf courses. The demands for these 5 categories are based on recent historical withdrawals. All of these various demands draw water from the available surface and groundwater resources. The municipal portion, which represents the largest water demand, also has an associated wastewater component. The wastewater flow component in the county includes the used water from the service areas in addition to an inflow and infiltration component, or I&I, which was estimated and included in the wastewater flow. For the current condition, the maximum annual average wastewater flows are approximately 4.9 million gallons per day at the county level. The annual average wastewater flows were analyzed rather than the maximum month flows as was done for water. This is due to the wet weather impacts observed in wastewater due to the inflow and infiltration impact. During rain conditions, areas with combined sewer systems could see very high flow rates, while during dry times, only the base flow is observed. High rainfall in a single month could skew the average. Therefore, an overall annual calculation is used to determine if a particular plant is nearing its permitted treatment capacity limit. The existing demands and flows can be compared to the existing infrastructure. In Knox County, there are a number of water treatment plant facilities, and their total capacity is about 8.4 million gallons per day. All of the source water is pulled from the groundwater. Remember that the total maximum daily demands are about 7.1 million gallons per day. So, in the current conditions, the county has sufficient capacity to provide treated water to meet demands. From a wastewater treatment plant capacity standpoint, the county has 5.5 million gallons per day of permitted capacity at the existing facilities across the county. The current max annual average wastewater flows generated by the demand and inflow and infiltration are about 4.9 million gallons per day. And again, the existing county infrastructure is sufficient to meet the current wastewater flows. With an understanding of the current conditions in the county, the next step was to expand the analysis and explore potential future conditions. This study evaluated conditions in 2030, 2040, and 2050. When analyzing future conditions, current data is projected from the present to the future in time. With that projection comes uncertainty, which is why analyzing multiple potential future scenarios can provide more resiliency and reduce the risk of failure. Scenario planning acknowledges there are several plausible future conditions that may occur and allows planning for several possible future conditions. On the left side of the cone, there is only one point because current conditions are known. As time goes on, the cone of uncertainty expands and the range of possible future conditions widens. The widening could indicate divergence among the scenarios and changes in the recommended project that aligns with that scenario. Analyzing several scenarios or plausible futures helps ready the region for ending up in future A, B, or C, and knowing the projects to implement all along the way. 4 model scenarios were developed to define the range of potential futures. Scenario conditions that were explored were 2 different precipitation and temperature changes and 2 different population estimates, totaling 4 different model scenarios. The different inputs of these scenarios will be explored further on the following slides. Two population sources were used for the scenario modeling. The expected growth trend was informed by the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, or MORPC. The MORPC population projections were informed by local zoning and land use plans. The historical growth trend was informed by the Ohio Department of Development, or ODOD. The ODOD population projections are informed by historical birth, death, and migration trends. The population projections were used to estimate the future increases in municipal water demands and private water system demands over time. The bar chart on the left shows the different county level growth rates between 2020 and 2050 for the 2 population sources. The table on the right shows the future estimated total Knox County population for each source. The MORPC estimate results in slightly higher population estimates and therefore higher water demands. The ODOD estimate estimates a slight reduction in population and therefore a lower water demand. Municipal and private water system populations are assumed to change over time based upon the 2 population estimates that were just described. The left graph shows the municipal population over time for both population estimates, and the right graph shows the private water system population over time for both population estimates. The municipal population are the people assumed to be served by a utility. The private water system population are the people assumed to be outside of a service area and have self-serving groundwater wells. The municipal population is very similar to the private water system population, meaning that about half the county population is assumed to be served by a utility and the other half pulls their own supply. The expected growth trend estimates assume a larger population increase over time for both municipal and private water system populations. The two heat maps show the current and future estimated population distribution within the county for the expected growth trend. The left figure shows the current or 2021 condition and the right graph shows the future or 2050 condition. Comparing the two figures, there is estimated population growth within the center of the county, particularly in the areas surrounding larger municipal areas, such as Mount Vernon. Current and future land use data was also provided by the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. The left image shows the current or 2021 land use condition, and the right image shows the future or 2050 land use condition. The land use categories match that of the National Land Cover Database. For the current condition, a large portion of the county is pasture and hay land use, with various areas of development, particularly around Fredericktown and Howard. Over time, it is estimated that previously developed areas will expand and become more intensely populated, such as Mount Vernon, which can be seen on the right figure. Another element of the scenario modeling are the different temperature and precipitation scenarios projected. Historical precipitation and temperature data from 1983 through 2022 were used to estimate the surface water runoff and evaporation. For the future conditions, change factors were applied to the historical precipitation and temperature data to analyze the effects it may have on surface water availability. Temperature and precipitation changes were based on the global climate model data downscaled to the Central Ohio area. There are different change factors for each month and future planning year, 2030, 2040, and 2050. Change factors were extracted from an ensemble of 49 global climate models from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Two climatic conditions scenarios were selected for evaluation of future conditions, a moderate climate scenario and a hot and dry scenario. The moderate change scenario represents the middle of the road and utilizes the 50th percentile change factor for both temperature and precipitation from the ensemble of global climate model data. The top left graph shows the 50th percentile change factors for precipitation, and the bottom left graph shows the 50th percentile change factors for temperature. As the graph indicates, there is a greater change projected for temperature over the planning horizon. The extreme change scenario that was modeled is the hot and dry scenario, which utilizes the 5th percentile change factor for precipitation and the 95th percentile change factor for temperature. The top right graph shows the 5th percentile change factors for precipitation, and the bottom right graph shows the 95th percentile change factors for temperature. A scenario with no future temperature and precipitation change factors was also evaluated. The two temperature and precipitation conditions affect the future raw water supply availability, as the two different population estimates affect the future water demands. 4 model scenarios, all with different supply and demand conditions, were developed to reflect potential future conditions, as shown in the graphic. The intense pressure scenario consists of the 5th and 95th percentile temperature and precipitation change factors and the expected growth population estimates. The full speed ahead scenario consists of the 50th percentile temperature and precipitation change factors and expected growth population estimates. The easy does it scenario consists of the 5th and 95th percentile temperature and precipitation change factors and the historical growth population estimates. And lastly, the resource abundance scenario consists of the 50th percentile temperature and precipitation change factors and the historical growth population estimates. These four scenarios allow for planning of what different supply and demand conditions may look like and how those conditions compare to the infrastructure needed. As discussed, the different temperature and precipitation scenarios will impact water supply availability. In the model, the surface water supply availability was changed based on the temperature and precipitation change factors. However, groundwater availability values were unchanged based on these change factors. The graph shows total supply availability before any demands for both surface and groundwater over time. For both change scenarios, generally the extreme change scenario, which is hotter and drier, results in less available surface water supply availability over time, and therefore less available total raw water supply. This bar chart shows the assumed future water demands over time in Knox County, broken up by type. As shown previously, current demands are mostly municipal demands. For future demands, municipal and private water system demands remain as the largest portion of the county water demand. Industrial and agricultural demands were assumed to remain constant as industry and agricultural irrigation were not predicted to expand in the planning period. Previously, the current water and wastewater capacities were explored at the county level. There are currently no future new or increased infrastructure capacities that were modeled for Knox County. Therefore, the current water and wastewater capacities were assumed to remain constant through 2050. In this section, we will discuss water resource and related infrastructure needs at the county level. The graph shows combined surface water and groundwater supplies in orange, the max month municipal water demands in light blue, and water treatment capacity in dark blue over time. Since the demands are less than the water treatment capacity and less than the raw water supplies for all years in the planning period, the treatment capacity and raw water supplies are sufficient to meet municipal demands at the county level. In this graph, the demands represented by the light blue line now include municipal plus private water system demands. The raw water supplies and water treatment capacity are sufficient to meet the municipal and private water system demands over time at the county level. Finally, when assumed non-municipal demands are added, the raw water supplies are sufficient to meet the water demands at the county level, but the water treatment capacity is not sufficient to meet the demands. The demands surpass the water treatment capacity by 2040 at the county level. It should be noted that the non-municipal demands are not expected to be met by municipal water treatment plants through the planning period. This slide presents similar information but relative to wastewater treatment capacity. On this graph, the annual average municipal wastewater flow for the expected growth trend are shown in light blue, and wastewater treatment capacity is shown in the dark blue at the county level. Existing wastewater treatment capacity is sufficient to meet future municipal demands at the county level. The previous section evaluated supply and infrastructure availability relative to demands at the county level. This following section will address resource gaps and abundances when you consider where those supplies, infrastructure, and demands are projected to occur within the county. The dashboard planning tool that was created as part of this study helps users visualize the resource gaps and resource abundances. The nodes on the map are color-coded by type and are sized based on how large of a gap or abundance there is for that given node. If a node is filled in red, that indicates a gap. Gap definitions are as follows. For a surface water node, is any shortage observed? For a reservoir node, does the usable storage ever reach 20%? For a groundwater node, does the remaining groundwater amount ever reach 0? For a water treatment plant, is the maximum monthly average flow greater than 80% of the permitted capacity? For a wastewater treatment plant, is the maximum annual average flow greater than 100% of the permitted capacity? This table summarizes resource gaps within the county for each scenario and model year. There are at most 3 gaps for any given year and scenario for the entire county. Most identified resource gaps in the county are infrastructure-based and not raw water supply-based. These gaps will be explored further on subsequent slides. Findings in the subsequent slides reflect the expected growth and moderate temperature and precipitation change in 2040. The 2040 full speed ahead scenario was selected as the target planning scenario to allow stakeholders to assess the current and future project needs without extending too far into the future while using reasonable temperature and precipitation projections. The following slides will provide detailed discussion of the potential projects that could fill identified water resources and infrastructure gaps within Knox County. Project focused on identification of opportunities and strategies to fill those resource or infrastructure gaps. Gaps can be filled through a variety of ways depending on the type of gap. For example, a supply gap could be filled by constructing a reservoir or implementing a policy to restrict use during times of low supply availability. Other solutions include expanding treatment capacity and leveraging reuse water. Gaps are often filled with a project or a set of projects. A gap or set of gaps can be filled a variety of ways and can exist across some or all scenarios. A scenario scorecard was developed to assess the favorability of a project used to fill a gap. 5 scorecard criteria were developed to evaluate projects compared to each other as indicated on this slide. Scenario applicability assesses if that project will fill a gap across one or more scenarios. The more scenarios it addresses, the better. Similarly, but a little different, within the same scenario, a project that fills more gaps is more favorable. Life cycle costs are another important consideration. The total life cycle costs include construction, operation and maintenance, and other projected costs. Water quality impact considers impacts associated with development, as well as changing water and wastewater use. A project that provides higher protections to water quality ranks higher. Finally, a project with a shorter implementation time would be considered more favorable since the benefits of that project would be realized sooner. strategies for the 2040 full speed ahead scenario to provide planners with near-term planning information. Note that findings of the resource gaps were previously discussed and can be further explored using the dashboard planning tool. The infrastructure gaps, treatment gaps, and supply gaps are shown in the map graphic. Many of the gaps are relatively small, so that monitoring flows in the near term may be sufficient. Further detail on these gaps is provided in tabular format on the next slide. Pre-planning level projects are provided as examples and possible solutions to fill gaps. Additional efforts are needed to define, plan, and implement a project as outlined in the next steps. Projects to fill gaps categorized by type. First is local, where the utility largely uses its own assets to fill a gap or an industry provides its own on-site solution. Next is regional, where a utility collaborates with other utilities. And reuse, where the utility leverages reuse water to provide non-potable water to an industrial user in order to reduce potable water demand. This table provides detailed information on the projected resource gaps in the 2040 full speed ahead scenario in Knox County. A key finding is that water supply is generally sufficient based on rated capacity of the water treatment plants. Wastewater related gaps are relatively small and growth should be monitored to determine if regionalization, plant expansion, or other options are favorable. The TES Water Treatment Facility is a Delco facility and is part of the Delaware County presentation. The Centerburg Wastewater Treatment Plant has a relatively small projected wastewater treatment gap of 0.02 million gallons per day. The timing and right sizing of the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant should be aligned with the village's priorities. Reuse and regional connections are not viable options for this wastewater treatment plant. The expansion of the existing treatment plant assumes construction of additional treatment facilities with no change in the use of the existing facilities. The village may be able to expand or optimize the capacity of the existing facilities to reduce infrastructure requirements and project costs. Equalization tanks may also be a lower cost alternative if determined to be appropriate. The Danville Wastewater Treatment Plant has a relatively small projected wastewater treatment plant gap of 0.04 million gallons per day. The timing and right sizing of the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant should be aligned with the village's priorities. The expansion of the existing wastewater treatment plant assumes construction of additional treatment facilities with no change in the use of existing facilities. The village may be able to expand or optimize the capacity of the existing facilities to reduce infrastructure requirements and project costs. Equalization tanks may also be a lower cost alternative if determined to be appropriate. A regional interconnection with the Little Jellaway Creek could be a viable long-term option. In this option, the Danville wastewater treatment plant would be eliminated and all waste could be conveyed to the Little Jellaway Creek wastewater treatment plant. There are many considerations beyond just the infrastructure costs shown, but regionalization and collaboration offers new opportunities to maximize resources. The various options described as A and B were then evaluated using the project scorecard, with green cells indicating options with highest favorability. This next section will present the evaluation conducted to determine areas of opportunity, which are defined as areas where there is assumed modeled surplus capacity. It should be noted that this section only identifies potential areas for opportunity. Project planning and utilization of surplus capacities will require further evaluation and discussions with local municipalities and stakeholders. First, water supply areas of opportunity will be discussed. Raw water supply sources in the county have opportunity for growth. There is surface water opportunity in the Kokosing River. However, planned withdrawals from the Kokosing may be subject to additional regulations as the river is a state scenic river. It should be noted that the surface water availability estimates are based on limited available stream gauge information. There is less groundwater opportunity than surface water, but there is still some available groundwater opportunity throughout the county. Next, we looked at the areas of opportunity or surplus resource with regards to water and wastewater infrastructure. While there are only 3 infrastructure gaps, there are not many areas for opportunity as the plants in Knox County generally have capacities less than 1 million gallons per day. Mount Vernon has available water treatment capacity that can support growth, though source water for the water treatment plant will need to be assessed. This next section will present the project findings relative to projected water quality across the planning horizon. While the Central Ohio Regional Water Study was primarily focused on water supply and treatment capacity, the models developed were also used to project potential impacts to water quality that may occur due to the changes in population, land use, infrastructure, and future temperature and precipitation changes. The goals for the water quality assessment were to characterize existing water quality conditions. The study identified watersheds with the highest existing water quality. Such pristine watersheds were considered to be the most sensitive to future development. Determine potential impacts. The study developed potential impact factors based on available data and the suite of possible future scenarios, including those evaluated for water supply and treatment. Watersheds were characterized as having higher or lower potential for impacts based on the identified impact factors. The scenarios use a range of future conditions. The intent is to illustrate where water quality impacts will likely occur. And finally, to provide recommendations and activities that could be completed by local agencies, utilities, and organizations to help offset, mitigate, and protect against water quality degradation. The graphic illustrates the approach to characterizing existing water quality and understanding the potential for future impact. Those watersheds with both high existing quality and high potential for future impacts should be considered as the highest priority for action. Watersheds throughout the region were characterized using the following 3 metrics. Quality of aquatic habitat. This is a standardized metric for measuring the quality of aquatic habitat at a specific location within a stream. The average QHEI score in a watershed was calculated to determine the overall aquatic habitat score. Targeted water quality standards. The aquatic life use designation as well as anti-degradation tiers provide a listing of streams that are targeted to remain high quality. These are assigned by stream reach for each HUC watershed. The reach categorizations for anti-degradation and aquatic use designations were evaluated to determine an overall categorization at the watershed level. Stream biological health. The Ohio EPA has performed modeling to estimate the potential biological health of headwater streams based on land use factors and a desktop analysis. This modeling generated an estimate for all of the headwater streams in each watershed A summary categorization of the results was applied to each watershed based on all of the stream reaches within its boundary. Given the above factors, an overall water quality category was applied to each HUC 12 watershed, ranging from poor to excellent. For Knox County, the majority of the watershed scored as good or excellent, with a few small exceptions. 4 factors were used to determine the potential for future impacts to water quality. The first was land use. The population and land use projections provided by MORPC were used to estimate the overall change in the percent impervious of the watershed as estimated to occur by 2030, 2040, and 2050. Literature data has shown that increased impervious area in a watershed is typically correlated with decreasing water quality. As impervious area increases, the overall stream water quality tends to decrease. Second is hydromodification. When streams see higher flows and/or more frequently occurring storm events, stream banks may experience increased erosion. With these flow changes, streams may become incised and disconnected from floodplains, resulting in a decrease in water quality and increase in suspended solids. Next, increased occurrence of low flows. During dry weather conditions, healthy streams may typically maintain base flows to support aquatic life. If the low flow periods are extended or flows are projected to be lower under future conditions, it could have a negative impact on water quality due to loss of aquatic habitat and could therefore lead to more restrictive permitting requirements. Finally, temperature and precipitation. Changes in temperature and precipitation were considered in multiple scenarios. The stream model was again used to evaluate the impact of temperature and precipitation conditions during low flows. In some watersheds, the impact of temperature and precipitation on stream flows was found to be more significant due to lower flows during dry conditions that were not able to be offset through either wastewater treatment plant effluent or increased runoff. The potential land use impacts on water quality were evaluated based on projected changes both to population and land cover. The population and land use projections were provided by MORPC. The data was used to estimate the overall change in percent impervious with each watershed. The colors reflect the absolute percent increase in impervious area. Thus, a 5% increase in impervious area would indicate that the total percent impervious in the watershed would increase from 10 to 15%, for example. Literature data shows a strong correlation between stream conditions and the percent impervious for a watershed. As the percent impervious increases, water quality tends to decrease, particularly in areas without appropriate setbacks, mitigation, or stormwater controls. Hydromodification impacts. When streams see higher flows and/or more frequently occurring storm events, stream banks may experience increased erosion. With these flow changes, streams may become incised and disconnected from floodplains, resulting in a decrease in water quality and increase in suspended solids. A stream model was developed for the entire 15-county service area to stimulate stream flow from runoff as well as from wastewater treatment plant infrastructure. Future scenarios were developed that examined the impact of changes in population, land use, and temperature and precipitation on projected flows. 40 years of simulated stream flow were analyzed to determine the impact of different future scenarios on projected flows. Flows from the model were used to determine which watersheds may have a higher potential for channel modifications due to changes in flows. Watersheds in dark blue have higher potential for future hydromodification impacts based on the regional watershed model. For watersheds with a downstream modeled link, any of the watersheds that saw a 10% or higher increase in projected flows during frequently occurring storm events were designated as having a higher potential for hydromodification to occur. The watersheds with a lower potential may still experience hydromodification in isolated instances, but changes are not projected to be as significant given the range of forecasted scenarios. Increased occurrence of low flows. During dry weather conditions, healthy streams may typically maintain base flows to support aquatic life. If these low flow periods are extended or flows are projected to be even lower, it may have a negative impact on water quality and lead to more restrictive permitting requirements. The stream model was used to simulate stream flow from runoff as well as from wastewater treatment plant infrastructure. Future scenarios were developed that examined the impact of changes in population, land use, and temperature and precipitation on projected flows. 40 years of simulated stream flow was analyzed to determine the impact of different scenarios on projected flows. Flows from the model were examined, and an evaluation of flows during the driest periods was conducted to determine which watersheds may have a higher potential for water quality impacts due to decreased base flows during drier periods. Watersheds in dark purple have higher potential for future water quality impacts and more restrictive permitting requirements related to increased occurrence of low flows. For watersheds with a downstream modeled link, any of the watersheds that saw a 10% or greater decrease in projected flows during low flows were designated as having a higher potential for water quality impacts. The watersheds with a lower potential for low flow impacts may still experience impacts due to drier conditions and isolated instances, but changes are not projected to be as significant or as widespread given the modeled results from the range of forecasted scenarios. As noted, these areas are not indicative of any potential water supply or availability concerns, but instead indicate areas where low flows could impact habitat and permitting requirements. Temperature and precipitation. Changes in temperature and precipitation were considered in multiple scenarios. The stream model was again used to evaluate the impact of temperature and precipitation conditions during low flows. In some watersheds, the impact of the changing temperature and precipitation on stream flows was found to be more significant due to lower flows during dry conditions, especially areas that were not able to offset low flow through either wastewater treatment plant effluent or increased runoff. The model used 40 years of simulated stream flow to determine the impact of different scenarios on projected flows during drier periods. In some watersheds, the impact of temperature and precipitation on stream flows was found to be more significant due to lower flows during dry conditions that were not able to be offset through either wastewater treatment plant effluent or increased runoff. Watersheds in dark blue have higher potential for future low flow impacts due to temperature and precipitation change. A high impact, hot, dry, temperature and precipitation scenario was compared against a medium impact temperature and precipitation scenario. For the high impact scenario, if the base flows were lower than those in the medium impact scenario, then the watershed was flagged as having a higher potential for water quality impacts due to temperature and precipitation conditions. In some cases, High temperature and precipitation impacts were found to be slightly offset through increased wastewater treatment plant effluent and additional runoff from impervious areas. Overall, these areas flagged as high potential for temperature and precipitation impacts are those areas that may be slightly more vulnerable to temperature and precipitation impacts. All of the watersheds experienced some impacts and flows due to changes in temperature and precipitation. The Central Ohio Regional Water Study dashboard can be utilized to examine individual watershed characteristics and identify watersheds with excellent water quality and high potential for future impacts. Those watersheds can be considered and prioritized for protection, conservation, and restoration activities. Several potential mechanisms are available for water quality protection. With potential water quality impacts identified, considering water quality protection is the next step. Water quality protection is a critical part of any water resource plan. It is important to understand that streams are constantly changing due to a number of factors, including vegetative communities, adjacent land uses, and changing temperature and precipitation. The magnitude of change over the next few decades will vary across the region and is subject to several variables. Current development plans indicate that development pressure is being increased in areas that are rapidly developed. Proper protections should be in place prior to development and significant land use changes in order to protect local water quality while supporting economic development. Proactive watershed engagement may reduce or eliminate negative impacts of development on water quality. 4 categories of solutions should be considered, including policy, partnerships, data, and funding that could be used to help offset or mitigate any potential future water quality impacts. Based on the findings of this study, there are some key locations that would benefit from prioritized protections. While all protective measures should be initiated across the region, immediate focus should be directed to protecting the high water quality watersheds with a high potential for future impacts. Integrating data collection efforts from NPSIS plans into MS4 compliance activities, municipalities can improve regulatory efficiency, strengthen funding opportunities, and enhance water quality improvements. Routine review of local ordinances. Local ordinances should be revisited on a routine basis to ensure they adequately address the changes the region is facing. In general, policies should be revisited on a routine basis to ensure they align with one another, are well supported with responsibilities delegated appropriately, and adequately protect natural resources. Riparian setbacks protect riparian buffers that reduce runoff and pollutants. Floodplain requirements ensure adequate space is available during storm events for systems to overflow their banks without flooding infrastructure. Stormwater management plans lay out best management practices for reducing stormwater runoff. Zoning and planning codes restrict development to certain areas, and in doing so, can be used to protect valuable resources. Tree codes can encourage strategic planting of native and temperature and precipitation resilient trees, which compose riparian buffers and can promote storm infiltration rather than runoff. Fee rates established for the Planning Commission and the Soil and Water Conservation District should be reviewed to ensure they adequately support proper review. These ordinances may be implemented at various levels, in which case a designated authority should be tasked with inventorying where the policies are and are not in effect to encourage collaborative efforts. The county should push to have 9-element non-point source implementation strategies or NPSIS plans in place as early as possible. NPSIS plans are defined at the Huc 12 watershed level. There are 31 Huc 12 watersheds completely or partially located in Knox County, of which one has an Ohio EPA approved NPSIS plan in place. Depending on when TMDL plans are estimated to be complete, Knox County may need to consider fast-tracking NPSIS plans in order to be eligible for 319 funding and to help define and prioritize projects. The NPSIS is a living strategic planning document that summarizes causes and sources of impairment, establishes critical areas, identifies quantifiable objectives to address causes and sources of impairment, and describes projects designed to meet those objectives. The NPSIS is designed to evolve as projects come and go and will need to be reevaluated periodically, similar to the regulations mentioned above. MS4 compliance. NPDES permits are routinely updated. Every 10 years, urban areas are redefined by the Ohio EPA based on census data, which will be in 2030. Communities need to be prepared if they are close to reaching that threshold. Consider eventual need for separating permit administrative duties as communities reach the urban area definition. Consider adopting additional regulations for areas experiencing rapid development that are not within a defined urban area. Ensure plans and resources are in place to support adequate preparation and review of an increased number of PTI and NOI applications. Ensure resources are in place to support increased number of SWIP reviews and construction site inspection. Educate communities on grant funding and other mechanisms available to support compliance with local water quality initiatives. MS4 communities can leverage a NPSIS plan to meet permit requirements by identifying watershed-specific strategies and projects that improve water quality. Strengthen partnerships between municipalities, watershed organizations, and other local governmental agencies. Communities don't need to work alone. Planning efforts are typically developed with input from state and local agencies, watershed groups and nonprofits, soil and water conservation districts, and universities and research institutions. By coordinating efforts with these stakeholders, communities can collaborate, get together and coordinate current issues and upcoming plans, meet regularly to discuss trends, projects, and upcoming plans. This can be outlined in stormwater master plans and can be expanded upon to involve additional stakeholders to discuss overall watershed action items. Invite guest speakers to learn about new opportunities. Representatives from existing partnerships or outside agencies can share success stories, lessons learned, and upcoming opportunities for projects and funding. Collaborate data collection and permit review responsibilities. Ensure responsibilities are delegated appropriately and that all partners have the resources they need to carry out said responsibilities. Link data between agencies through GIS. Pull the data collected and create a GIS database that is linked. This allows for partners to readily use data that is already available. Make data accessible via a GIS viewer with a user-friendly interface. Make information available for use and for partners to recognize where gaps in data may exist. This also allows partners to build on work that has already been completed. More on this in the next slide. Increase community engagement and participation with existing watershed partners to create a network of support for managing water quality challenges. Support programs that provide training on data collection for monitoring water quality indicators. Citizen scientists can help collect valuable data and observations. This helps engage and inform the community. Facilitate educational opportunities with the public through outreach and training. Utilize NPSIS plans to identify partners and outreach resources. Host a platform to collect public observations and concerns. This is useful for monitoring spatial changes over time, as well as identifying key areas of concern for community members. Monitor water quality. Bolster local data collection efforts through training and certification programs. Monitor development impacts. Implement long-term monitoring programs to assess the cumulative impacts of population growth and development on water resources. Educating communities about the importance of water conservation and pollution prevention can encourage responsible behavior, and involving communities in data collection is a great way to encourage grassroots efforts to take place. Use monitoring data to inform revisions to watershed management plans and policies, ensuring they reflect current and future challenges posed by population growth. Digitize records. Encourage the use of GIS viewers to store available data collected by various governmental and public entities. Digitize existing record drawings and georeference new development records as they are constructed. Ensure data is collected equitably across the county, focusing on watersheds with high quality features and those experiencing ongoing issues or areas adjacent to and notably downstream of new development. Public reporting. Collect observations of flooding, erosion, and general water quality and store records digitally for analysis and reference. This will help identify areas of concern that are being felt by the community. Share monitoring results with the public and stakeholders to increase transparency and accountability. The figure shown is a screenshot of some of the layers the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District has available to the public on their GIS viewer. Red dots show public reported flooding. Storm sewers are depicted and attributes from records and inspections are stored. Attributes including pipe size, material, depth, and age are readily available and spatially referenced. Inspection data can be tagged to assets for tracking purposes. Department of Health IDDE sampling locations and results are also available. USGS stream gauges are linked, as well as ODOT bridge inspection data. Planning studies are identified that include reports and recommendations for the problem areas where available. Prioritize infrastructure upgrades. Secure funding for critical infrastructure such as stormwater management systems, wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and failing septic system replacements to support growing populations. Focus on areas identified as current or near-term gaps. Consider future scenarios to inform planning decisions and assess regional optimization of services as early as possible. Incentivize sustainable practices. Establish funding programs to encourage developers to adopt green infrastructure and other low-impact development techniques that minimize the environmental impact of new construction. Stormwater best management practices include bioretention, pervious pavement, and extended detention. Encourage redevelopment over new development where possible. Proactively identify areas that are suitable for redevelopment. Leverage grant programs. The Clean Ohio Green Space funding is available for preserving green space or riparian areas through Clean Ohio. These funds can be used for property acquisition. Ohio EPA Water Resource Restoration Sponsor Program targets nonprofit organizations, parks, and municipalities. They may apply for funding to protect or restore high-quality water resources as an implementer. There's a competitive annual process that connects the recipients with a sponsor. Interest from the sponsor's WPCLF loan ideally pays for the implementer's projects. The Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District offers a Partners in Watershed Management Project Assistance Program and NPSIS Development Grant funding. This program provides assistance to local communities, agencies, and groups involved in projects and programs that support the conservation and flood control aspects of the mission of the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District. 4 funding streams are currently available: Stream Gauging Program, FEMA Hazard Mitigation Assistance, Debris Removal Program, and Acid Mine Drainage. Foundation for Appalachian Ohio offers multiple grants, 3 of which are applicable: community grants, research grants, and innovation grants. This is made possible by grant monies provided by the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District due to the proximity within the Muskingum watershed. Section 319 grant funding is available for areas with approved NPSIS plans. There is one HUC 12 with an approved NPSIS plan in place in Knox County. H2 Ohio provides funding through H2 Ohio Rivers and H2 Ohio Wetlands. The Rivers program has several grant funding opportunities. Those that are applicable are listed, as well as the coordinating state agency. Agricultural Incentive Program. In 2024, Governor DeWine announced a statewide expansion of H2 Ohio producer initiatives, making the initiative available for the first time to producers who farm outside of the western Lake Erie Basin. For the first round of statewide enrollment, ODA offered enough funding and resources to enroll a new 500,000 acres outside of the western Lake Erie Basin. More than 525 producers in 51 additional counties enrolled in 2024. The program incentivizes farmers to implement science-based, proven best management practices to prevent nutrient runoff and improve water quality. ODA works closely with county soil water conservation districts to administer participant contracts, provide technical assistance, and support producers. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the state of Ohio are partners in implementing a Voluntary Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, CREP program, to enroll up to 67,000 acres of agricultural land in the Lake Erie watershed and to enroll up to 70,000 acres of agricultural land in the Scioto River watersheds within the state of Ohio. Participants receive financial incentives from the USDA to voluntarily enroll environmentally sensitive cropland or pasture land in contracts for a period of 15 years. In return for annual rental payments that average approximately $150 per acre, participants may convert the land to native grasses, trees, and other conservation vegetation. Chloride Reduction Grant Program. A new partnership between the Ohio EPA and the Ohio Department of Transportation is focused on reducing salt pollution in Ohio's waterways. The H2 Ohio Chloride Reduction Grant Program now offers grants to communities to help them improve road salt storage and handling to reduce salt runoff into Ohio streams, rivers, lakes, and groundwater. Equipment grants. Ohio EPA awarded more than 250 communities across the state a total of $1 million in grants for equipment needed to maintain their public drinking water infrastructure. The grants cover distribution system equipment such as mobile leak detectors, line locators, valve exercisers, flow meters, hydrant condition assessors, pressure monitors, and training to use the equipment. In 2024, a second round of grants were awarded to over 250 communities for a total of $2.2 million. Equipment obtained under the grant must be used to exercise distribution system valves, perform leak detection on the distribution system, and for meter accuracy testing. Healthy Rivers Livery Grant Program. The program will support livery owners in removing trash from rivers and addressing long-standing cleanup needs. The grant will support up to $10,000 in costs to clean up Ohio's rivers and streams. Dam removals. The H2 Ohio Rivers program is also focused on removing low-head dams across the state that have outlived their intended use and are harming water quality through oxygen depletion, trapped sediment, and interrupted fish migration. Water infrastructure funding. Ohio EPA, through H2 Ohio funding, has awarded grants for a variety of water infrastructure improvements, including home sewage treatment system replacement, collection and conveyance system improvements, and treatment works upgrades. The H2 Ohio statewide wetland grant program is a reimbursement grant program that provides up to 100% project funding for high-quality natural infrastructure projects focused on nutrient reduction and water quality improvement across the state of Ohio. Applications for grant funding for projects outside of the Western Lake Erie Basin are open annually. Types of eligible H2 Ohio wetland or natural infrastructure projects include wetland creation, hydrologic restoration of wetlands on hydric soils, hydrologic enhancement of existing wetlands, floodplains, and repairing corridors, stream conservation channel design and floodplain restoration, restoration of forested riparian buffers, acid mine drainage abatement projects, dam removal and associated restoration, property acquisition if associated with water quality restoration project, and stormwater retention or green infrastructure projects. In summary, the Central Ohio Regional Water Study included an evaluation of projected residential and industrial growth, the associated increased water demand, available water resources, and water-related infrastructure, including an assessment of water and wastewater treatment plants. The study evaluated the adequacy of existing resources and infrastructure to meet projected increases in demand over a 25-year planning horizon. The findings for Knox County can be summarized as follows. Knox County is projected to experience residential growth in the near future. This growth has the potential to put stress on available water supply and related infrastructure. Water resource and infrastructure capacity was compared to projected water and wastewater demand. Future projects were identified to alleviate or offset projected gaps. Projects identified as part of this project have been designated as local, regional, or reuse focused to give a range of potential future investments. In addition, areas of opportunity have also been identified, which could lead to regional partnerships and the sharing of resources. As growth occurs through the county, plans and pathways for protecting local streams and encouraging sustainable development practices can be leveraged. If you have comments or questions regarding this presentation or the Central Ohio Regional Water Study Dashboard, please see the project website. Thank you.